All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'll pull up. Let me. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So we're here. Um. So yesterday we started the stream and I had a power outage twice. So I ended up just not even worrying about it finishing because we barely even made it. I was like 4 hours in and I barely made it 48 hours through the stream and I was like, oh my god, we're gonna be here all night. So we're gonna be here all night tonight to do this. But yeah, so we're here. I'm kind of waiting to see if we're gonna get some people coming in or what. She here, okay. All right, so we're fine on Twitch. Okay. So yeah, I just I wanted to continue this because there was actually like a lot of good stuff going on, a lot of good discussion on this. And apparently, and I don't know, but apparently there's I don't know. I've seen some feedback to the stream and stuff like that, and apparently an hour in is where things kind of go a little south, like in the sense of like they're running out of um things to talk about and stuff. So I kind of want to see that. I kind of want to see. It looks like there's something on the lens. I'm gonna clean that. Hold on, you guys. I'm gonna like way at my ceiling. No, no. That's good. It's still a little high, isn't it? That's good. But yeah, so I'm very excited. You know, one thing that I've kind of, I you know, as someone that makes a lot of, I don't know, as someone that makes a lot of like lore content and stuff, I've realized that this time around it was so crazy because the last two expansions dealt with like all these like subjects from a long time ago and stuff, and there was just like, you know, yeah, let's talk about Bava Nisus, let's talk about Mersad, let's talk about White Mantle, right, for like Janthia Wilds, right, let's talk about the Janthia region, let's talk about that stuff, right? um so there was like so much to talk about. You know, the expansion before that, it was like, you know, we're talking about the Wizard's Tower, we're talking about Asgarin, we're talking about like demons from a demon realm. Like there was so many things. Like I remember I did a whole stream where I went through the realm of torment just to show you guys like, okay, this is the realm of torment, like this is what demons are all about, you know? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. I'm about to lose power again. I've been waiting all day to stream because I was like, okay, is my power gonna go or not? Please, to dear God, don't lose power. Like it's finally fucking left. It's been raining all fucking day. It's been raining all fucking day and storming all fucking day. And I'm like, okay, is this gonna go away? And I just hope it's not gonna happen. But anyways, I'm gonna get started. I don't know if people are gonna come in or what. I have no clue. I did say on my stream when it got cut off with yesterday's, I said that I would be back today to finish the stream. So you know, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys. So I'm sorry. You know, that's just how it goes. But anyways, we can probably get into it now. Should be fine. So the sound is up. So I think the last thing, I don't really remember what the last thing is. I'm trying to see. I think they were just talking about like general design ideas and stuff, and like Sneb was asking some questions. And then I talked about how like I kind of liked the shift a little bit. It went from like being one thing to being another kind of thing. So let's look. Oh, look.
Come up quite a few times. just on social media and stuff. When I look at some of these new Elite specs, I think some of them are perhaps a little bit more simple when it comes to gameplay and maybe APM, right? Actions per minute. Are you really, really fast with it, or is it a little bit more relaxed, right? And there's some diversity within the game across all Elite specs and classes with that regard. But when I look at some of the new ones, I think, ooh, some of these are pretty fast. When you're thinking about designing these Elite specs, how do you balance kind of the fast-paced, high APM gameplay with more accessible, lower APM styles, so that when somebody sees, I'm just going to say a random one, like Amalgam, because that's what I'm on right now, they go, I want to be able to play this, but maybe I'm not a super high APM player. How can you make it exciting for both kinds of players?
I think Taylor has higher APM than me, so he can take this one.
I think it's about options. A lot of the ones, like, I think keeping things simple is good. And focusing a lot around the gameplay about like emergent gameplay. Like, you don't need all abilities to do like a ton of things. Like, the 2 skill on a Gale shot is just like it shoots 3 arrows. It's not exactly complicated, but I think in the situations you'll find yourself in, and everywhere, that's what kind of makes it more interesting. So I think things being simple is good, and I think having options around different types of gameplay, like when you look at Deadeye, there is like builds where you can have very low APM and builds where you have super high APM, and it's about letting players pick. We don't want there to be a class that's like the only way you can play it is super high. I think if you look back around like Untamed Launch, Fervent Force was a trait that had like super high APM, was super strong, but it was like the only way to play Untamed, and we had an issue with that. We wanted to make sure it was a lot more accessible. We don't have problems with high APM builds. We like them. We want to make sure that it's not the only way to play it, and that, accessibility, like you're saying, is something we definitely keep in mind. And we'll be looking at when we do these specs. As we like have been talking about, we create these skills and we have a general idea of how they're going to play, and then it gets in the game, and then like, we don't fully know until you're there. So watching like what is the most optimal Gale shot build, what is the most optimal conduit build.
And I think it's kind of like one of the things is it's probably kind of tough as well for them to kind of do something like that. So the question being, right, like the question he's posing is like, okay, well, do they look into like how difficult it is to use a spec like, APM, meaning actions per minute, like how, some need more than others, and is that like a big consideration? But I feel like they probably don't look at it like that, right? Because I think, as they go through the design process, they just kind of like design, okay, this is what we want to do with this spec, right? And they kind of design skills around it and animations around it and stuff. And I think this is something that they can probably look at um further down the line, right? Like as they have the whole thing kind of designed, is like, is this like difficult to use or not? But I don't I feel like that's never been really a concern of theirs much, because I feel like there are certain elite specs that just have higher APM than others, and that's just the way it is. But when I look at something like Reaper, for example, Reaper is really easy to use, right? And like I'm using right now, I loaded up my old Reaper, and I've been using him and playing around with him and stuff. And his like the APM on that is like way less. Like I can stack so much bleeding because it's like a Condi power build, right? And so like I can do a lot of power damage, but I have like a ton of Condi to the point where I can, if I really wanted to, I can stack up to like 50 plus. Hi Jacob. I can stack up to like 50 plus. Um why are things like my partner thing not on? That's kind of weird. I'll do the partner thing, and I'll do my, I just realized my name on it too. Um, but yeah, I don't know if they really concern themselves with something like that. I think it's just, I don't know if there's a design philosophy that has to do with that. I don't know. It doesn't sound like they really do, but I'd be surprised if there
Is
was.
something we are very interested in seeing what people create, and making changes based off that.
Cool. We love to see that. Got
Another
anything else, Seb?
question that
You got anything else?
Yeah, I've got another one. There's kind of a theme of some questions that have been coming up, so hopefully this appropriately combines them. But there's some people that are saying, hey, you know, I might feel that, again, kind of random, but like Ritualist is maybe kind of close to Core Necro or plays very similar to something that already exists. I think there's some question about like how do you really distinguish these and make them feel like they're truly unique and it's just not another power DPS build on Necro.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to like the theming and kind of the exact way that the skills come together. Because obviously, if you're playing an elite spec versus a core spec or an elite spec versus a different elite spec, the skills are all going to be slightly different. And you know, you might have the same weapons, or you might have some overlapping generic deal damage utility skill or generic like damage bonus utility type stance. But like the skill rotations and the general gameplay of the spec is hopefully feels different enough that it feels like, okay, well, maybe this spec's a little bit more bursty moments. This one's going to be like much more of a sustained DPS. So there are like slightly different flavors of, you know, there's a lot of elite specs that do, whether it's power damage or condi damage, just DPS elite specs, and they all generally feel pretty differently. You know, there is some overlap, especially when there is a lot of the same weapons being used, but they still all have their own little flavors, whether it's coming from their traits or their progression mechanic or their utility skills.
I feel like the point as well when they were like, you know, Ritualist feels a lot like Core Necro, that's not entirely unintentional. Core professions and a lot of their gameplay is something that people really like. Obviously, when you game first came out, that's what you did, is play the core profession, and then as elite specs have come and been made, a lot of it has been not lost, but maybe not highlighted as well as it could have been. And so I think when we were designing like Ritualist, we were like, we want kind of a more core necro feeling shroud that's range replaces your health, something that you're used to.
But does it really feel like a core necro? I don't know. That's kind of strange to say that, because no, core necro as like the mechanic of a core necro, right? Which like elite specializations are designed around changing what the what the mechanic of a profession does, right? So having the core necro be all of like, it's all about the shroud, right? The regular like death shroud, right? And you know, it focuses on that. So I don't understand how Ritualist is at all really like I don't know what they mean exactly by play like the core necro, because it doesn't, I mean, visually it doesn't look like that. I mean, yeah, it's green, I get that, right? But it you know, there's a lot more to it with like the spirits and everything, and then you have the weapon spells which like are function different. And even if you don't use those, like I feel like the spirits are enough. Like, are we just talking about the auto attack? Because the auto attack is just like a regular attack on you know, while you're in the shroud on Ritualist. Like, I mean, I guess they could have designed it differently, but I don't know. I don't know if that's really such a huge thing. I don't know.
You have the core virtues like you're used to, and so both like kind of class fantasies that the core profession provided that maybe isn't highlighted upon by some of the new elite specs, as well as the gameplay, was something that when we looked at these professions, like, can we bring that back into like an elite spec world?
And
no one says anything. Hello? Wake up.
Very cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah, I think that kind of that solves it for quite a bit of people. There's a few other questions. This is kind of related, I guess. People are curious about how not adding weapons or attaching weapons to elite specs has now shifted the design space and maybe given you more freedom, or like how does that affect the design space and not having to have that weapon attached?
Taylor, are you interested in taking this one?
I guess I can talk about it, because like for me personally, I never felt restricted by not having a weapon. I just felt like it put it more highlight on the actual profession mechanics that it's coming with. Some of maybe the older elite specs like Scrapper, a lot of its identity was in the hammer. And that it's, you know, if you look at the profession skills, there's not too much different from a core engineer there. And I feel like here it just kind of, we knew that we had to put all the flavor and impact of the gameplay into its profession mechanic, and also keep mind of like all the weapons that come along with it. So I feel like even like the Gale shot specifically, even if we could make a new weapon for it, I felt like the professional mechanic did what I needed it to do to sell the spec. So personally, I didn't feel hindered at all when making these without the weapon. I feel like they, they shine on their own. They don't need that additional gameplay hook with it.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of important to make sure that in the absence of weapon, like all the professional mechanics do feel, that they evoke the correct identity or the correct feeling for what the spec is trying to do, because there is no weapon to like fall back on. You really only have the professional mechanic and the utility skills and the traits, of course, which, there's a lot of crazy traits in some of these elite specs that really are specialization defining or playstyle defining. So, we have to lean a little bit more heavily on those things just to make sure that this really does feel like a new gameplay experience. And,
yeah.
It's interesting because I think Trig touched on that a little bit. I think it makes it easier for them to not have to consider a weapon, right? Because I think early on, and I think he brings up a good point about like Scrapper, for example. Like a big part of the Scrapper's identity was like using the hammer early on, right? It was like that's kind of like, yes, you had the gyros and stuff like that, but I think a big part of the identity was like using the hammer. That was like the big thing, I feel like, there, right? Where that wasn't as necessary with other elite specializations, or something like Weaver, for example. I think Weaver really played a lot with having a sword, using a sword and like weaving in and out of the different, because the thing is, the weapon skills are kind of designed to work with that specific mechanic in a lot of ways, and I think Weaver did a great job in that sense, because there was a lot of like Water had some evades and stuff, so you could get out of combat if you needed to like swap your attunements and stuff. There was like a weird flow, like a flow that kind of worked with like each weapon in the elite specialization kind of thing. And I think it's interesting now because they can look at, when they make elite specialization, they can look at like, oh, what different weapons do we have that we can utilize in this that we can utilize in this elite specialization. Like what is something that maybe we can create a flow with, or but they can hit on like multiple different ones if they wanted to, right? And they could say, well, this synergizes well with this weapon, but this synergizes well with this weapon, right? And they kind of look at all these different things that maybe could mesh really well together. And I guess I'd like to think that gives them more design freedom to kind of make the spec just more like, more flexible in that sense, where it kind of fits with these other weapons and stuff, and not have to make it work with this weapon, right? Like that, it kind of restricts you a little bit, because it's like, oh, okay, well, we design it around this having the weapon. I think in a lot of ways that kind of takes away from some elite specs, and I think I think it's going to be interesting to see the new generation of elite specializations versus the old generation of elite specializations, right? Because we're probably going to get more in a couple years, 3 years, maybe, whatever, right? We're going to probably get another set, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see, because I think we're going to see a little bit a shift in what these elite specializations feel like. I think I can already see it, because as they put it, as like they can put a lot more effort into like actually thinking about what the mechanic does, rather than having to focus on like, okay, what does the weapon do and does it synergize well with the mechanic and blah blah blah. They can just think about, okay, utility skills, mechanic, and traits, right? That's all we have to really worry about. Obviously, there's a lot more attached, like animations and stuff like that, but it's like, those are the main three things that go into the gameplay loop of a elite specialization. And I think we can already see kind of a difference in that because of how detached these specs are from weapons and stuff. Like I think there's already something there, so
that's just important because the weapons are all unlinked at this point as well.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, actually, of course, because, with Secrets of the Obscure, with weapon mastery, right, elite specs really need to stand on their own because they're going to be combining with all of them anyway, right? Because of that feature in that expansion. So I bet, you know, it's got to have a lot going on, or it's over. I think that's kind of all of the. I think all of the main questions we had, if I'm not mistaken, Sneb, actually. So I think, are we going?
You think so? You think it feels like they're the last ones planned? So why do with them bringing back many of the guild hasn't on? So I talked about this yesterday a little bit. So what I think this kind of pertains to, like them bringing back the Guild Wars 1 professions and stuff, I think, like, I don't think that this has anything to do with like the planning and design stages, but what this has to do is with them, like, I think they're on this path. ArenaNet is on this like path. Whether that's a good path or not, I think we'll have to see in a couple of years, like how this turns out, or over the next year as like Visions of Eternity releases. But I think a big part is that they want to listen to the player base, right? That's like their big thing. They've reiterated that in one of the blog posts recently, where they're like really just about like, we want to listen to the player base, we want to listen to the player base. And the thing is that this could be good and this could be bad, right? Because I think there's certain things the player base asks for that maybe are not good. Like, I don't know, I can't like bringing back dual classing. Like, I think that would be a friggin' disaster, right? Which I have my own opinions on, and I have a whole series on my channel that I need to work on more. But you know, that kind of, you know, where I talk about that already exists in game. But what I'm saying is that they're, you know, to go back to the original point, they want to listen to the player base, right? And they want to look at the things that people have been asking for a long time, right? That's why we're seeing an overhaul to the looking for group tool with this expansion, right? That's why we're seeing some of these elite specializations be professions that people have been wanting to come back for a long time, right? People have been asking for Dervish, Paragon, and Ritualist since Guild Wars 2 has released, right? And especially once they started adding elite specializations, people wanted these over and over and over again. People have been asked. So I think the idea is that they were like, we're going to make this happen this time around. Like, this time around, we really want to add these elite specializations, these professions that people have been wanting since Guild Wars 1, because they were so popular during Guild Wars 1, right? These were like the big, like, standout classes in Guild Wars 1. And I think ArenaNet is on this path of like listening to the player base, which is kind of cool, because that kind of means that the more we ask for something, right, the more likely it is that this will be added, right? If more people are asking for a very specific thing, that will mean that with the next expansions, this might happen, right? That's why I think it's very important right now for us to talk about the core game, for example, which I think needs a huge overhaul. And if they can do anything for the core game, that would be fantastic, right? Yesterday we had a really long discussion on the stream about, like, you know, because I pulled up a comment from YouTube and stuff that I had on one of my videos where someone said, you know, oh, they should just get rid of the leveling experience and stuff like that. And we kind of got in a little bit of a discussion about why I think that's a bad idea. And you know, but I think we're at a point now where ArenaNet, not that they're running out of ideas to do, but I think what they're understanding is that if they keep ignoring the player base like that, they're gonna kind of create a little bit of discord with the player base, where they're not really. I think they want to connect with the player base again a little bit, right? And I think this whole stream that they're doing is like one step of it, right? Because I talked about this yesterday, where we have the developers and the player base, and we don't really have this like connective tissue anymore. We used to have that, right? We used to have that back in the day. This was like a very common thing, but this is kind of like over the years there's this gap now, and I think ArenaNet is leaning towards us, the partners, now to become kind of the liaisons for the player base, and kind of being that connective tissue in a way, right? And that's why they're doing this stream, trying that out, because they probably want to do more of these in the future, and kind of let the partners pick up the questions from the player base so that they can kind of, ask these questions and stuff. So I think all of this goes into the idea of they want to listen to the player base, and that's why they were like, what is something that the player base has been asking for? Well, they've been asking for Paragon, they've been asking for Ritualist, and they've been asking for Dervish, right? Dervish not as much, I want to say, but it's still, these were very highly demanded, and I think ArenaNet was like, you know what? We want to design more elite specializations. Why don't we do that? Why don't we listen to the player base and say, let's bring these back? Now, whether or not they're well designed in that sense is a whole nother question. I think they've laid a good groundwork with them. I think some of them are a little rougher on the edges, but I think that's why they also keep reiterating from the stream, yesterday's stream, that these are in beta. I think that, like, they keep talking about these are in beta, give us feedback. And I think one of the reasons why ArenaNet focused on having these elite specializations, like, the expansion was announced, and what was the first thing that they went into? They didn't talk about Castora, they didn't talk about the skimmer masteries, they didn't talk about the maps, they didn't talk about rewards, they didn't talk about, like, the looking for group to overhaul. Like, we have gotten no details on any of this. But what have they been doing for the last month? They've been just leaning on elite specializations, right? That's all they've been doing, because what they want is they want to get as much feedback. Like, obviously they want to hype the expansion because we still have a few months before that comes out, but also they want to get as much feedback to them now as they can, because they now still have time to change as like a lot of different things. The closer we are getting to the release of the expansion, the less they can change about them, and they know that. So they were like, we got to get this whole elite specialization feedback thing out of the way first, do the beta, get feedback, and then have all those developers, while we're talking about other things from the expansion, work on that, right? Like, I think that's where it's coming from. Having leveled up a couple of characters recently, I think it's fun and almost too fast. Longbow Focus Ranger and Fire Wizard were requested a lot, so I agree with them. Listening, yeah. So right, that's something, and that's exactly it, right? They wanted to make with the Evoker, they wanted to make the, like, single attunement. Like, they're talking about its beta, and we haven't gotten to that point. I guess in this stream they will talk about it, just so we understand. Like, I didn't watch the stream yesterday, so I don't know anything that they're going to be talking about in the future. Like, only the first 56 minutes of this that I know what they've been talking about. So but I think they're trying to listen to the play rates, and they're trying to make it work, and so I think they talked about, the Evoker, for example, being the single attunement elementalist, because that's something that's been demanded as well, right? Longbow Ranger, like you said, like, these things have all been and I think that's where the design decision kind of comes from, rather than them just sitting there and trying to pull something out of thin air, right? Like, people have been asking for a Bard, people have been asking for a Longbow Ranger, people have been asking for all of these things, like Ritualist, Paragon, right? And so I think, rather than just sitting there and coming up with something that maybe they're going to think, like, is the player base going to like that or not, right? They're going to lean towards what the player base has been asking for, and just saying, well, they've been asking this, why can't we just, like, use that, add that in, right? Like, and so that's where it's coming from. I think the important part right now, we're at a stage right now in the development cycle where, I kind of talked about this. I kind of called bullshit yesterday, because Cal was saying that, because the question was, well, how much can you change of an elite specialization? Like, if we give you feedback and we say, hey, none of this is working, like, this is absolute garbage, like, can you change the whole profession, the elite specialization? And he said, yeah, we can change it. If we need to change it from the ground up, we can. Which I think is complete bullshit. I don't think that is at all in the cards. I think we're too close to the release of Visions of Eternity for them to design an elite spec from ground up and have it ready to go in a couple months, right? So I think that's bullshit. I'd like to think so. That's my opinion. Other people might have other opinions or whatever. I just think that that's not feasible. But I think right now we're at a stage where it's very important for us to give the feedback that we can, right? Be very constructive about it, give them ideas, because if they are in the phase of their development where they are focusing on listening to the player base, which they I'm gonna be honest with you. This is a new thing for ArenaNet. They have never really been about listening to the players, right? They've always acted like they're taking our feedback, right? And they've done certain changes based on feedback. But for the most part, I will say that, I've played this game for over 10,000 hours, and from what I've like felt like, it's been over the years, ArenaNet hasn't, like, they've kind of listened to feedback, but they've been more prone to not listen to it and just kind of be. I remember myself saying, like, years ago, like, oh, ArenaNet always acts like they know everything better and they don't listen to the player base and stuff. Like, this is something that's crossed my mind a lot, just based off of how they've been, the things they've been adding and the things they've been changing. But if they're really, I think they're really showing this, that they're listening to the player base. So right now is the best time to give that feedback and really give constructive feedback, because if they're listening to it and they see a really good idea come towards them and they're like, you know what, like, people are liking this, like someone posted this on the forums or Reddit or whatever, right? Made a video about it, whatever, right? But this is all like really good and a lot of people like the changes, and this is something that we can do and we agree with the changes. Like, let's change it to that, right? Like, they're more likely to do that right now. So I think this beta coming up on Wednesday is like super important, that we put our best foot forward, that we put the best constructive criticism that we can in there, so that they can take this feedback and do the changes that we need them to do, right? Because like I said, I think a lot of the elite specializations feel like, yes, they've been listening to play base and they've been trying to make it work, but some of them feel kind of rough around the edges. There's certain things about ritualists that I think are a little like why is that there? Luminary, I'm still like, I feel like it's still all over the place. Like, it doesn't really have an identity in a weird place. But again, I haven't played it, so I'm just kind of, this is all like preliminary like opinions that I have, right? But I think it's important for us to understand that this beta coming up it seems to be very important. I think if we compare it to other beta events that we had before, and I said this yesterday as well, I think a lot of betas from long time ago feel more like they they were more like these what's the word? There's like a specific word that I'm looking for. They were more like these I can't think of the word. It's like they're just a formality. That's the word, right? They're just a formality. That's how the old betas used to feel like, right? It was just kind of like, okay, we have finished the design and we're not going to change a lot about it, but we kind of want to hear what you guys think, and maybe we're going to tweak some numbers here and there, right? Where this beta, this time around, it feels different, because I keep hearing both Trig and CMC kind of reiterate, like, these are in beta, these are in beta, these are in beta, like, these aren't finished, pretty much these are not finished, we're not finished yet with them. And I think they've kind of taken that approach of like, let's really have the beta tests be actual beta tests and not just be a formality of like, hey, we're gonna let you guys beta test and get some feedback. So that's how I feel, at least, about that.
Going to the next phase in the plan, which we definitely have. Wait, where's he going? He's actually running away. That's unbelievable.
The dog is going crazy. Somebody rang the doorbell and
Dog's
he went
hyped.
ballistic. So I was like, you guys don't want to hear that.
Yeah. I mean,
but yeah, we're kind of going to the community part where we're just fielding as many questions as possible. I've seen another couple of themes. This one has come up a whole bunch of times. I don't know if it's a meme or not, but whatever, I'll ask it. They're asking about sort of what the plan is for underwater integration with some of this stuff. Because, of course, something like Mechanist, traditionally, they had it. The Elite Spec has a totally different identity underwater. And so people are concerned about, like, what'll that look like for Antiquary? What's that going to look like for Ritualist? What is that going to look like for all of the Elite specs?
Why can't we show that off right now? Is my question. There's also a lot of time until the game comes out, so they actually have time to... And that's the thing, right? Like, I think a lot of people... So when we look at, like, the development cycle, and when we look at the release of it, right? One thing we have to take into account is the idea of them having postponed the release of this expansion by 2 months, right? Why is that? Right? Like a lot of people would be like, oh, because they're not ready with stuff and they had to push it back because they're crunching and they're trying to get it out. What if, right? Give them the benefit of the doubt. What if this was done on purpose to do exactly what they're doing right now? Where they're like, okay, listen, we're going to push it back a couple months, the release. We're not going to do it at the end of August. We're going to do it at the end of October. Because the way that we wanted to do is in August, we're going to just have beta tested and have these elite specializations be in not a rough state, but like in an unfinished state, and then take the feedback from the community because we want to show them that we're listening to them. So let's give them that. And then we have the 2 months to kind of finalize these elite specializations and have them ready as they come out, like for the expansion to come out. Like maybe that was the whole idea behind it, right? Like give themselves enough time to change that so that they can say, hey, this is an actual beta and we can change these, right? And we have enough time to actually change the mechanics of some of the stuff, maybe some animations, maybe some like how these work, change the numbers, move traits around and stuff like that, because it already sounds like they have a lot of things lined up for the changes too, right? Like they kind of were like saying, yeah, we're already moving like the Alec trait or whatever, and like one of them or whatever it was, right? So it kind of seems like that's kind of where it's that might be what it's that, I don't know, maybe that's why that is the way it is, right? Like the 2 months later or pushback or whatever. So this is the interesting question here is, so the question is, how do the elite specializations work underwater? My thing is, why can't they go to a water spot and do that? They can even do it in Lion's Arch. There's underwater stuff there and they can kind of try it out. But I do want to hear the answer, because that's interesting. Yes, we don't have underwater content. We've been shying away from that. We hate underwater content. And that's okay. That's fine. Whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I've always wanted more underwater combat. But as with many things, I am very different in the way that I approach the game, that I play the game, that I make videos about the game, and that, my connection with Guild Wars 2 is a little bit different than most other people, I think, in that sense.
A big plan for that right now, or is that kind of still cooking?
So we've done our pass on all the things and tried to make them work underwater as much as makes sense. A lot of things like ground targets will have to change to be like enemy targeted. I'm running over to the water right now to show off that ritualist spirits do actually work underwater. On Guild Wars 2, if I can spawn the right. Oh, that's actually interesting. So all the spirits work underwater, for example, and this is kind of true for a lot of the progression mechanics and utility skills. We do sometimes have to pick and choose that some things have to get disabled because they just don't work fundamentally or mechanically underwater, but for the most part we do our best to try to make sure that all the skills and all the progression mechanics will work underwater.
I also think so. One thing I want to say as I'm like watching Mighty Teapot play here, I will say, so my least, so I made a tier list about the different elite specializations, and my F tier was the only one in there was the Luminary, because like I said, I'm a kind of guy that deals in like concepts and ideas. I don't get down to like, okay, how many seconds of alacrity and how many seconds of quickness, or how many stacks of might can I get out of this or whatever. Like I don't deal with that stuff, because I think on this, those are very shallow things, because those can always be changed, right? They can increase the alacrity on something by a couple seconds, or they can move it to a different trait, or they can put it on a different skill, right? It doesn't have to be like I don't think, like I talk about the like deep things of like the animations and how does the flow of everything feel, and like how does it all like look. And I gotta say that when they showed the Luminary, it looked really boring to me. And like I said, I still don't really understand, like the lantern thing is kind of weird and we're not highlighting that, and like it feels kind of strange to me still, like the shroud and stuff. But I gotta say, the animations are really cool. Like some of the animations I'm like watching, I'm like, oh man, that looks really good. Like that actually looks really good. So I'm still kind of, like I said, I'm these are preliminary opinions that I have, because Wednesday is going to be the big day where that's actually going to come into play, where I'm actually going to have an opinion, build an opinion. It's starting to rain again. Please don't. No, I need power. Don't let the power go out anymore. Please. It's nice that Teapot got revenge for Roy. What do you mean, revenge? Like, talking about where he is? I don't understand. Like, Roy is such an interesting character to have on stream, why they don't have him on stream more often. He's one of those characters that can kind of, like... Again, we're dealing with, like, two awkward... and nothing against Trigger CMC at all. Like, I think they're great guys, whatever. I don't know them, they're probably fantastic people to hang out with. But... like, they're not personalities that are, like, camera personalities, right? They're not, like, hey, streamers, whatever, right? Like, so Roy is more like that, right? And it's kind of, like, I don't know, Roy adds a little bit to all of that, Oh, is that right? Oh, that's funny. I might have watched that stream, and I don't even remember that. Oh, that's funny. The guardian NPC killed Roy. That's interesting. I think the theme and stuff is usually where they did well, but it's a detail they fail at it. For example, Soul Beast is amazing, but in many raid strikes, it just randomly unmerges. Well, that sounds like a really terrible bug, right? So bugs are a thing that I think ArenaNet needs to look at as well, because I think they have some very egregious bugs in the game that have kind of plagued the game for a long time, right? And when you have again, just so you guys know, if my electricity goes out, I'm gonna try to stream again. I'm gonna try to go live again. I had to do that yesterday, but then I lost electricity again 5 minutes into the second part of the stream, and I decided not to do that anymore. So if I lose electricity, I'm gonna try to go again after it comes back on. But I also don't have too long. I mean, I do have time today, but I don't want to sit here and have to keep trying over and over again. So I hate to drag this on over freaking God knows how many days, but apparently the weather does not want me to stream. But anyways, but yeah, I mean, that's more like, I don't know if I would really put that into the same bucket. Like, that's two different buckets, right? Like, that's the design and what specific traits do and what specific skills do. Like, that's like one area, but then having bugs, like something like that where it randomly unmerges, sounds like a terrible bug to me, right? And that kind of sucks. But I don't know if that I would blame the design there. Like the they're like, I feel like that's like two separate things there that we're kind of looking at. Which is whatever, right? Like, I'm not saying that you're wrong in any shape or form. Like, I think that's a terrible bug. Because I think having like bugs in the game that maybe where in a specific area of the world like this happens, having a bug there, okay, that's whatever, right? But you have it on an elite specialization that you play and like randomly it unmerges you, like that's something that can be distracting and be just kind of really ruin your whole gameplay, right? Like, for whatever you're doing, and that's kind of annoying. So I think, and that's something that ArenaNet needs to start doing more. ArenaNet needs to look more at the bugs that do exist in the game and kind of figure it out. I think the issue that they have with that is that they're dealing with spaghetti code. We talked about this yesterday as well. I think we touched on that a little bit yesterday, but the thing is that, was it yesterday? It might have been a different stream. I don't remember. But I remember specifically some of the developers that have left ArenaNet said that during like Icebreed Saga and like right around the firings and all of the stuff, when all of like season 4, when all of the stuff was going on, right? Icebreed Saga season 4, like right around that time, that they were all instructed, right? Just to give some background to this, they were instructed to write the code without leaving any notes in it. Meaning that anyone that were to look back at the code had no idea what any of the different lines of code did, right? Because it's just like you have pages and pages of code, right? You have all this fucking code and you don't know what it does because there's no developer notes and they're telling you what every line of code interacts with. So they're having an issue with having to go through. I'm going to lose power. I already know I'm going to lose power. So I'm really sorry, you guys. I'm going to go as long as I can until my power goes out and then try again. But for whatever reason, it's picking up again. And it's not just like it's telling me heavy rain. It's not just heavy rain. There's lightning. There's thunder. Can we highlight that too? It's not even telling me. It's telling me rain. Great. I would like to know how many like thunder strikes we have. Let me look at what the map looks like real quick, just so I can make sure that I... Okay, it's like coming right over me right now, but then there's another wave that's coming down. Yeah, it's supposed to linger literally right above me. It's like right above my house. Jesus. I forgot what I was saying. Anyways, yeah, I don't even remember what I was saying. I think I made.
Yeah, it's good to know. Because I think underwater combat, although it's not like it's not the most dominant thing in the universe. Of course, where we're going in Visions of Eternity, we're going to be in a tropical vacation. There might be some swimming going on there. Maybe the crab is going to be battled underwater. We don't know. And actually, I just have to quickly note something. I have to quickly, yeah, you've got to get those swimsuits, guys. You really do. I want to quickly point out something. I have done something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. I have avenged Roy and defeated the Guardian NPC in single combat in the PvP lobby. And on Luminary as well. Okay, so that is important stuff. Just wanted to quickly point that out for everyone.
Is that right?
Oh, might be OP to nerf it.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of very profession-specific questions. Unfortunately, I feel like we're not going to be able to answer. I feel like those are probably still cooking quite a bit. So, like, people are asking about Amalgam. They're asking about Evoker. They're asking about all these, like, specific things. What's the best way that they can, maybe express their concerns? How can they get you the data you need? I kind of asked that before, but let's reiterate that again.
I think if you have feedback that you want us to read, the best place to put it will be the forums. It'll be like we did with the weapons, or it will be like a master thread that has all the links. So like if you have like Elementalist feedback, then there will be a thread. We read every comment in those. If you want me to read something, put it there. I promise you, I will read it.
Alright, so you already here. All your feedback, put it on the forums. I know forum is awful, and I hate being on the forums, but if you have any feedback, I mean, I don't know how it works. Like, I don't know if they look at any of the streams, because I don't go on the forums, and I don't write up stuff on, like, Reddit and stuff. I just give my feedback on my streams. So if they want my feedback, I'm going to be honest with you guys, as a partner, they kind of need to look at my stream. And because I'm not going to, like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm not going to do this stream and test the stuff out and talk to you guys on stream and then go do a write-up on the forum. Like, I'm not, I don't know if I even have time to do that. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a busy guy, alright? I have naps to take and walls to stare at. Come on. It doesn't do it, Come on.
Party social medias, like Reddit, I know a lot of people like to put things there. I'll most likely read it there too, but I would say like official, like the forum, if you want to get read, there's very, very high likelihood to put it there. So yeah, that'd be the number one place. Specifically in the threads that we make. Like if you want to make your own thread, that's cool, but like the ones that we make, we do monitor those.
Yeah, and perhaps kind of on this element now, because obviously, again, like very specific questions may not be easy to answer right now, because again, things are obviously in flux. Can we give people in the chat some guidance, perhaps, on like what type of question would be good that we could actually engage with in the time that we have here today? Is there? I know that's a difficult question, I suppose, like on the fly, but can we guide people what they can ask us?
So this is where the weakness of this stream comes from, because it really shows. So we're an hour in, and they're kind of running out of questions already, and they're like not taking profession specific questions, which I don't really think make. Ooh, my power almost went out. Did my power go out? Well, my power didn't go out clearly, but did my internet go out is the question. Oh my god, please, let me just freaking stream. I hate Florida. Anyways, so I think this is where the weakness of the stream kind of comes in, because um the this should have all been planned out. They should have had it planned out of what it is that they're going to be asking, and they should have had more question. Like, they should have had a specific time frame of how long they're streaming, and they should have had, okay, well, if we need to fill a 2-hour space, for example, then we need to come up with a set amount of questions, right? And we need to have all these questions. So they kind of need to have this. But they're reading out of the chat, and then now they're getting they're not getting any questions that they can actually ask. It's so loud out there. Holy crap. And now they're getting questions that they cannot actually ask. So, you know, it's just kind of like, okay, what are they doing for the rest of the stream now? Like, I want to see where this goes, because I don't know. It just seems like this is where the weakness of the stream. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. This stuff was planned weeks in advance. This wasn't something they did. This is very unplanned. It happened very well, and that's the thing. So, as a partner, I do get a little bit of insight, and this seemed to me, because I heard about this before you guys heard about this, and from the way that this was, like, I tell you guys, this wasn't just something that they planned the day that they announced it. This was something that they had planned well in advance. So why are we not prepared for this? Like, nothing against Snap, nothing against Mighty Teapot, but come on, guys. You guys are big content creators. You have been doing this for a long time. You should be better prepared than this. Ooh, I'm just waiting for my power to go out, because it is happening. I'm just waiting. It's just a matter of time, you guys. The freaking, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but the thunder is just roaring out there, like, nonstop. The wind is blowing really hard. The water is coming down. I can hear it, like, splashing against my window. It's like storming out there right now. It's like a hurricane coming through. Holy crap. Heavier rain soon? What do you mean? We have as much rain as there could possibly be right now. Okay, well, we have like another hour of this apparently, so I don't know. A little over an hour, but yeah, it just, I don't know. It just because the thing is, like I said, from what I understand, this stream was planned in advance. I don't know how far. I can't give you that detail for sure. But from what I understand, like, this was planned in advance. So why are we acting like this was just like, oh, hey, you know, noon, they're like, let's get together in a couple hours, and then, like, they sit down and it's like, okay, what do we talk about? Like, this wasn't like this, right? I need a little bit more, I don't know if professionalism is the word to say, but, like, more preparedness, like, a little bit, right? Like, seems weird. Let's try to go through more.
There's a good guidance. Like, obviously, I have questions about or concerns, like discussion.
Also, not just on
like,
Snap and Mighty Teapot. I think also on their part, right? They should have been like, they're like, the question is actually a good question. Mighty Teapot had, like, okay, what kind of questions are you guys looking for? They don't even know what kind of questions they're looking for, right? I feel like if I was designing something, I'd be like, okay, well, I want feedback on, like, are you guys okay? Like, kind of guide the community in saying, like, okay, well, this is more likely to be changed than this, right? So, for example, they could say, well, you know, what do you guys think about traits? Because we're more likely to change those than we are changing animations on something or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's, like, certain things that they could talk about.
Just try to talk about them if we want to. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
some of the time the answer will be like, we're just waiting to see what happens with the beta.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
There are, like I've already said a few times on the stream, where there are things that we've seen from the initial reception that are things that we're already thinking about. So we could talk about some of those as well. Or if someone
would
like
you be
asks a
willing
question,
to maybe say what a few of those things are? Because I think people are asking those, but obviously I don't want to constantly bring them up if they're like a sore spot or anything. But is there any feedback you've seen already where you're like, yeah, we're definitely going to go and address that?
I think a minor one is, like, when we showed Troubadour and Alacrity, it was a conversation of, like, should it be Alacrity or Quickness? And I think, you know, that's something definitely keeping an eye on. I've seen a lot of good points about why it should be one, why it should be other. You know, biggest one to me is that the interaction between the new boon extension and time warp gives a lot of quickness, so being able to do both is potentially problematic, which we'll see in the beta. But I think, you know, a lot of the feedback that people have been saying are things that we're like, yeah, we'll definitely thinking about waiting for the beta to see like concrete, you know, like player feedback around it. But we
Okay,
are still like even now
that's
thinking
good.
about things we can change. Cal talked about changing the luminary. It's something we were managed to get in early. Yeah, there's after all of them, we do read. People are like, "What's the point of getting feedback now before the beta?" But even the things that people are saying just from the previews are things getting ideas floating in our mind. And the earlier time we have to prepare for them and do them, you know.
Okay. I mean, so what it
Awesome. So
sounds like
it's
to me
good. Like,
is that it's what it sounds like to me is the whole stream was kind of like planned, was probably an idea by Mighty Teapot and Sneb, and just being like, hey, maybe, I don't know, maybe this was like a third, not a third party, but like a third party to these five, right? Where it's like another person, maybe one of the managers or something was like, hey, maybe we should do more of this or something, like more involve the partners and stuff, which I talked about yesterday, was something that I've been looking for a long time, way, way, way before I became a partner. I talked to another partner, Chicken Noodle, who's a friend of mine, and we had talked about like, you know, more partner involvement and how I think they should involve the partners a lot more in these pre-expansion like previews and things like that, and streams and all the stuff. Which it looks like this is what the stream is, right? But I think from what I can gather, I guess they probably had like internally a thing set where they were like, okay, well, how are we doing what and what? It looks like they were fully planned on doing waiting just for the betas for feedback rather than just getting feedback, because I think what they understand is that all the feedback that they're getting right now is all feedback of people that have never played this, right? I think there's a lot, the combat with Guild Wars 2 is not so black and white. It's not as like, okay, well, it's all about the numbers and it's all about what a skill does and it's all about like what a trait does, right? But it's about the flow. There's a lot of like positioning and like how does it all kind of flow together, and like how does it all kind of feel as you play it. And no one has, we have had not, as a community, had not the opportunity. Like I had the opportunity, unfortunately I couldn't make it to the opportunity to play any of them. But the thing is that I think uh I think they're just kind of waiting, like, let's just wait and see, like, once you guys play it to really get some serious feedback. I think they're really, like, that's what they're waiting on right now. Yeah, for sure. It'd be hard to give good feedback. Yeah, I think every feedback right now they would, the problem is I think the feedback that they would have to take right now, that they would get from people, they would have to take with like a giant, like, you know, grain of salt. Like it just, they really did, because um you know, again, this would come from people that haven't actually played this. And yes, there's people that are good with dealing with numbers and stuff like that, but there's more than just hammering and using the skills. Like using using a build on a training golem and just using all your skills and doing the proper rotation isn't quite representative of what it feels like playing this a specialization out in the world, right? Like it's not the same, because that's just a target that sits there and you're just doing your thing and you're going to be perfectly positioned. There's no other enemies around, there's no other mechanics to worry about, there's nothing like that. You can just like focus on doing your rotation. So it's not very good of a representation, and that's what it means to look at just everything that we've seen so far, right? You can see the numbers, you can see the things, right? But like, how does it all work in the actual space of playing the game, you know?
like as a a big fan of the game and as a player, it's good to know that you folks see all that feedback and that you're considering those changes and thinking about what you can do.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll say this over and over and over and over and over and over, but it's a beta, and even if it wasn't a beta, like things are not going to be perfect on launch, especially like skills and balance, combat design. Like the Guild Wars 2 combat system is fantastic, but it's also like really complicated, and like there's a lot of things. We even see this like as balance updates happen, that there is a period of time where even the players that are playing the game so much, like it still takes time to figure everything out because there's like so many things to try, there's so many things to optimize, that you have to find the right build, and you have to optimize your gameplay around that build, and it's like, oh well now this is overpowered because we figured it all out. And it's like that's really interesting. Like that's the most fun part of like a game like Guild Wars 2, or just most games, is figuring out the overpowered things. But there is just a lot of complexity, so we don't really have the expectation that things are going to be perfect for beta or even at launch. But there's going to be more data, more information.
I lost my train of thought. I was gonna say something. Oh my god, let me go back real quick. There was something that I wanted to say.
They're not going to be perfect on launch, especially like
something about that. So I think the most important feedback right now, because that's what he's kind of talking about. He's like, they're not going to be perfect even at launch, and we're gonna, it's up to like our balance updates and stuff like that as we like release and stuff like that to change a lot of things. And I think what is most important, because and that's kind of what I talked about earlier, right? Like they can change the duration of alacrity, or they can move it to a different trait, or they can change like where quickness comes from, or they can change what like a specific trait, like if it interacts with like something, right? Or like the numbers, right? If like damage is low, they can increase that, right? Like I think those are easy changes that they can even do post launch. I think what it really comes down to is the groundwork needs to be set right now, right? Where we kind of get to the point where an elite specialization only needs those changes, but we have everything else like animations and like what specific skills do on like a deep level, like that type of stuff, because they might not be able to change that past that point, right? Like right now they're working on those things. So I think the feedback, like, I'm not going to be focusing, and that's just the type of player that I am and just the type of person that I am. Like, I'm not going to focus on like, do I get every boon that I want? Do I get all of the things? Oh, why does this elite specialization get all of these numbers? And why don't I get the numbers here, right? Like, those are all changes that I feel like they're going to get, like, they're going to get that type of feedback like a dime a dozen. Like, so many people are going to be talking about that, right? But I think we really need to look at like, okay, well, this trait feels really, really bad if you compare it to the other two traits, and this needs to do something else. Like yesterday we talked about how CMC immediately highlighted the Grandmaster, the Luminary Grandmaster trait that deals with the light auras, where the other two, and he was kind of like, well, the other ones are good too, right? But it's like the other ones interact with the virtues, and that kind of feels bad. Like just reading about that, like, I haven't played it, but that just kind of sounds like that wouldn't feel as exciting, right? Because having an elite specialization, you kind of want to deal with that mechanic, and I think especially the Grandmaster traits really are supposed to be these game-changing, kind of like really changing how an elite spec kind of plays in a way. And having like two traits that just kind of deal with like weapon recharge, like weapon skill recharges and stuff, like that just doesn't really sound exciting. And like we already have so much virtue gameplay as is on like even the core Guardian, so it's like, why are we highlighting that? Why is that in the Grandmaster? Like they need to come up with more, right? And that's the thing, so they need to come up with more exciting and like interactive Grandmaster traits, right? And I think that's an important part of feedback, right? Whether or not we get freaking quickness or alacrity or whatever, right? Like that can all be changed after the fact, but I think it's important that those like specific design things need to be, that's the kind of feedback I think that they're even looking for. That's just my
skills
opinion
and balance,
that,
combat design. Like the Guild Wars 2 combat system is fantastic, but it's also like really complicated, and like there's a lot of things. We even see this like as balance updates happen, that there is a period of time where even the players that are playing the game so much, like it still takes time to figure everything out because there's like so many things to try, there's so many things to optimize, that you have to find the right build, and you have to optimize your gameplay around that build. And
one thing
like,
I want to say, as I'm watching Mighty Teapot play as well, so one of my feedbacks that I had about the Evoker and specifically having the little spirits and stuff, I really think that they're missing something here. It's one of the reasons why the Evoker has kind of been, I put it mid-tier in my tier list, because I get the idea, but the execution is a little subpar to me, because you just have the spirit hanging out and you just have to press F5 every so often. Okay? And like, it's almost like Catalyst. It's like a different Catalyst. Instead of getting an AoE, you just get like a single target attack, right? Like, there's nothing exciting about that. And I'm like, yes, the utilities kind of deal with the spirits and stuff like that, but I still think that the spirit needs to do something else, whether it's like auto attack or do something, but it's just kind of like you're dragging this thing along, and you kind of, like, as you guys watch the gameplay here, you can kind of see it, like you drag the spirit along, and then Mighty Teapot will press like F5 every so often for the attack and stuff. It doesn't feel impactful. Like, it still doesn't seem to really change anything about the Elementalists. It's really not exciting to me, and that's something that I really, when I watched their stream, that was kind of the feedback that I gave, was like, this is kind of like, it's kind of it's kind of like there's nothing, it doesn't really feel like these spirits are that impactful. They're just like a catalyst thing, right? Like I still think that they should have an auto attack. I know a lot of people are like, no, they shouldn't have an auto attack, because if you're trying to get out of combat and blah blah blah, like I get that, like I said, I think there should be a toggle where you can toggle that on and off, where you can say, hey, I want this spirit to do an auto attack or not, right? But I think that the way they are right now, the spirits, they seem not really impactful, and I think we can kind of see that in the gameplay there too.
Now this is overpowered because we figured it all out, and it's like
you can't even see it.
That's really interesting. Like, that's
it's like somewhere in there right now. Oh, there it is.
Like a game like Guild Wars 2, or just most games, is figuring out the overpowered things, but there is just a lot of complexity, so we don't really have the expectation that things are going to be perfect for beta or even at launch, but there's going to be more data, more information, and we can continue to iterate and continue to make these elite specs and just the game in general like the best version.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy your 80k DPS while it lasts. That's what I'm getting from that.
Cool.
Okay, it's gonna drop. It's gonna be busted. Okay, get it done. Look, you've been working on that Aura Legendary Challenge mode. Look, okay, these elite specs have got you covered. Well, I'm playing Fire Wizard right now. Finally. Okay, it took long enough.
I'm watching.
Yeah. As you can see, the champion Arrowhead is no match for the power of the Fire Wizard.
You're not using any utility skills,
I assume you're playing the specialized elements trait, right?
Oh, of course.
I just realized I was muted.
Oh, this guy!
I have something really important to say. Really important.
Okay. Oh, yeah?
Okay, so important.
Yeah.
People, all of you are going to be able to try this. I think it's like next week on Wednesday. So if you're like really curious about Evoker, or you're really interested in Amalgam, and you're thinking, I got to get my feedback to the devs, this is your chance. Next week, you get to play, right? Isn't it the 20th? I have that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe it's the 20th, and it should be live for about a week, beta. So a lot of time to play with all the specs, play as many as you want, give feedback on as many as you want.
Put a smiley face in the chat if you're going to try out Fire Wizard Evoker. I think that's going to be a popular one. It's going to be a really popular one.
Definitely an interesting one.
I mean,
Very
seriously?
exciting.
Smiley face.
Great,
Yeah,
smiley
there's a lot of
face. Can
smiley
we
faces.
actually
There's a lot. I mean,
get
that's
back
a lot
to
of
what we're
smiley
doing here?
faces. I think we have to go do battle with
Imagine
the.
if all the smiley
It
people
feels
were
like
on
Catalyst
one
all over again. Yeah, it's just like I said, it doesn't really feel like there's an impact that these spirits have. Like, I get that you can like specialize in like a different, spirit, and you can say, I want to do this, I want to do that, and it interacts with like their specific utility skill and stuff like that, and they have like different abilities that they can do, and that's fine, right? Like, but I'm kind of missing the impact that they have. There's really no impact. Like when I look at like Ritualist, for example, right? We're getting like, instead of crazy shroud ability, like we're still getting a shroud, but now we have spirits that we summon, and they can do different things based off of that, right? But it's like I'm kind of missing like where the, like, it feels so close to what the Catalyst already did, right? Where the catalyst was like, oh, okay, well, we could summon a field and it does whatever, right? Like I said, I really think that they should have leaned a little bit more into this being like some kind of pet, um, that is like helping in combat in a way. Like I kind of miss that, like having to press the button for this thing, like having to press the F5 button for this thing to do anything just kind of seems weird. Like why is it there then, right? Like why do we have it just hanging out if I need to press the button? Like it's weird to me. There's something that I'm not quite like. I don't think there was that much impact. To kind of the other side of this, right? If he had fought this without having the pet with him or the spirit with him, I don't think this would have had any changes. I think this would have gone exactly the same way. Do you see what I'm saying? Like there was not this significant impact that having the spirit really did. He didn't even use any of the utility skills. So it's not like the spirit needed, like it didn't even have as much impact as it could have, right? Because it does get a little bit of impact through the utilities, but he didn't even use that. So more like mechanisms, less like catalysts. Yeah, I just think, like, I know a lot of people are like, I don't want it to auto attack. I think that's stupid, you know. But I needed to do something more. Like I don't know. Like have it at least set it to have it as auto cast or something. This ability, like maybe not have an auto attack in there, but like having to press the button for it to do something. It's just like catalyst. Like it's just weird.
Snab, we must do battle with the frog. Come to the frog. You know which frog as well.
Wait, which frog?
Are you kidding me?
Frog.
How can you not know which frog? We
Wait,
gotta
you're
wait.
talking about the one...
I almost want to make Trig 1v1 it.
Yeah,
I want to
someone
see
just
Trig
said
1v1
someone
the
said
frog
in chat.
on-
Someone just said in chat. So no more questions, and that's exactly where I'm at too. I'm like, so we're not asking any more questions. We're done. We're an hour in, and we're just hanging out now. Like this is not really. I don't know. Like I said, this is like the time to get. I don't know. I feel like there's other questions that people have.
Amalgam.
What am I
Like,
wondering?
that's
I don't know.
the frog.
Okay,
That they
yes.
could address.
I want to see it too. Trig
Yeah.
has to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
While I'm setting this up, I guess I'll make Cal talk while I'm doing this. You want to talk about
he's
like
gonna
kind
put
of?
on a build.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. He's doing a little
Okay,
cooking.
I need to swap for an amalgam. I need to swap for an amalgam.
Yeah. He's doing a little
so
cook.
what's some of the feedback that we're looking for during the beta, and like types of what do we want people to comment on specifically?
If you have like specific skills or specific sequences that in this example, it's like what actually is the clunky feeling of the spec? Is it because I wanted to press these 3 utility skills in a row, and then the aftercast was like,
I feel like a live stream is not the best place for questions, to be fair. And I think that's a fair point. I think it would be if it had been planned questions beforehand, where they know exactly what questions they're asking, but like pulling them out of the crowd, the questions out of the crowd. I think I agree with that. I think that's probably not the best, but I think it goes back to the whole discussion of like they didn't seem to have planned this really well. I would have liked to have seen a more planned out stream, because this doesn't seem that way. A forum or Reddit post would have been better, like an AMA or something like that. Oh my god, Jesus! An AMA would have been better. That probably would have been better. Like I think that would have been better. I think would have been more focused on gameplay for a live stream. Yeah, and I can see that, right? Like kind of showing off what the different things can do. Obviously this is like the first one they've done, but I think there is. If this had been more planned, I feel like this could have been better, because it feels like we're an hour in and it looks like we're going for another hour and a half, but they're not really asking questions. Like I don't
like
know
really
what's
bad,
going on. So
or
let's
it's
just
like
kind of keep
really
watching and see.
unintuitive the way that I like use my professional mechanic skills, or between like bouncing
Like
between like
strike
weapon
with
skills
every
and professional
spec
mechanic skills.
showing
Just
off
like the
what
general
role they can
gameplay
fill.
loops. If there's things that feel clunky, it's like where in the gameplay loop is the clunky feeling is kind of the more interesting component.
I think you bring up a good point, because this is the first time that we see them in action in the open world and stuff, and I don't think Mighty Teapot is doing a good job of showing them off. So I think they're looking for feedback and they can't, and the people can't play it themselves, but right now is an opportunity for them to see them in action, and like you said, see them in like strikes and stuff, and they could even do easy strikes and stuff, but that would be for the people in the crowd, like the snow crow people and like those people that make all the builds and that do all that stuff. For them, it's a good opportunity to see where everything kind of stands a little bit, and then they can give already like a little bit more of a informed, like a little bit more of like informed feedback too, because again, we talk about like the flow and we don't really understand, like we see it on paper and we see, you know, we read the stuff and whatever, but we don't know what it feels like to play it. So I don't know, it's an interesting stream, and I get where they're going with the idea, but I liked where they were in the beginning because they had like questions kind of set up and there were specific answers, and it was kind of nice to have that because you have these questions and then you have this, the way that the setup felt was that Sneb was the one with the questions, then you had these guys that could answer the question, and like, you know, each of the, it looks like each of them kind of designed, you know, probably half these on like who designed what elite specialization or whatever, right? And so they could ask, you know, answer specific questions pertaining to things. But if they had a question about a specific profession, then you had Mighty Teapot be able to show that off right then on the stream. Like I like that. I think there's a dynamic that would really work, but it just needs to be planned out, where they have like, okay, we're going to talk about this profession right now, this profession. But it was kind of like 50 minutes in, we're now running like into all of this, like it kind of muddies out, and it's just kind of like, okay, we're not prepared all the way. I don't know. Clunky is just what people not having muscle memory for new rotations or skills. It's just people not having muscle memory for new rotations or skills. I don't believe that. I think that is not a true statement. That's just a bad take. I agree with that. That's a bad take because there are certainly things that feel clunky. Okay, not everything has to feel like, I don't. If something is just badly designed and is just clunky, it's just clunky, right? I get that there's probably some people that are like gonna say something's clunky when it's like they just need to learn how it works, but yeah, I don't necessarily agree with
And
that.
obviously, you can just say, you know, this is clunky, and that's again valid, and we'll look into it and try to figure it out. But if you're getting that feeling, hopefully there's a specific reason why you're getting that feeling, and that's not always the case either. It's not like you can always give specific feedback of this skill is the problem, or like this trait is really uninteresting. It doesn't give me interesting gameplay decisions at all. It's very useful if you can provide a specific example, but even just those general feelings are pretty valuable to us because
Why
we
is the
will,
spirit just
you know,
hanging out
aggregate
like
all the
over
feedback
there?
and see, okay,
That's so
well,
weird.
a lot of people are saying this spec feels really clunky to play. Let's go figure out why and make that better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that players, I think, are really good at, is indeed identifying what's wrong. Like, identifying problems, right, is going to be really important, so that they can obviously be addressed, and the elite specs can, you know, can shine. Wow, it's not looking good for this amalgam. This amalgam just got deleted by the frog within seconds, actually. But yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Like, everyone should log on to the beta, play every spec, every bit of content, and then give feedback on the forums. I've read a bunch of forum threads recently, and honestly, there's some pretty interesting stuff in there. That's for sure.
We're hyping the forums up. Moving on. Hello.
Let's see.
I have a question that's come from the chat. A few people have asked this, but in different ways. They're sort of concerned about the location of specific traits, and you know, is there still opportunity to move things around?
Okay.
You know, what are your thoughts on that? I feel like before you kind of mentioned that everything's still, you know, you're open to feedback, you're willing to make the changes if they need to, correct?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, we kind of already ahead of the beta shuffled some stuff around in the Luminary trait line, so that's very, very possible to do for other specs as well. I think like traits are something that I kind of said this earlier, but traits are kind of a instance where we've seen a lot of initial feedback around like, well, this trait is boring, and you know, there's a lot of quote unquote boring or uninteresting traits in this trait line. So, obviously we want to make sure that the grandmaster traits are the ones that feel like the most iconic and the most build defining. But we still want the rest of the trait line to have interesting decisions. So if there are situations where there's not really enough interesting decisions, then that's something that we'll be looking at. I think a good example of this that we've kind of been thinking about after the initial preview feedback as well is kind of with the evoker trait line, where it's trying to do a lot of stuff in the same trait line. So there's a lot of like very specific traits, like all the different elemental traits. It was like a pretty interesting idea where it's like, here's a trait that gets better when you're
It's partly
specialized
true,
in that
and I
element.
agree. I mean,
But I think-
obviously, these are like we can't expect to be going into the betas and being like, "Oh my god, I can't." Like, some like I'm watching this guy keep getting downed and stuff, right? Like, and you can't say, "Oh, well, it's clunky because I keep getting killed," right? Like, there is a certain understanding that you need to have on like, is this actually a clunky or is this actually like, is it fine the way it is? I just suck at it, right? Like, do I need practice using it, right? But I think I don't know if that's so much for us to figure out than it is for the developers to figure out, right? So if my feedback is, hey, this skill is clunky, and no one else has that feedback, right? And I'm convinced it's clunky, and I'm like, nope, this feels clunky as hell, right? And I give that feedback, and they don't see anyone else saying this on this specific, and they're saying, no, this skill is fine, or this whatever is fine, right? Then I think it's up to the developers to kind of sift through that and really see like, okay, well, we've had one person say this, but like no one else is mentioning this. So is that really like, it's probably not clunky, right? It's more like, because you're bound to get these people that are all gonna be saying like, oh my god, this feels clunky as hell and all this shit, right? And like, yes, that might not be true, but I think it's really up to the developers to kind of go in there and see, well, because they can't take everything, like everyone saying, oh, this is clunky and this is clunky and this is clunky, okay, everything is clunky, we need to redo everything, right? I feel like you're gonna get that, right? So I think it's up to them to kind of really feel like, well, is this really clunky, or are we getting multiple of these reports, or is this just like a one time thing, that type of stuff too.
We're going to see how the beta feedback plays as people get their hands on it, because we've been playing with them internally as well, and it's like kind of interesting, but maybe it makes the trait line try to do too many specific things, and so it kind of just fails all of the builds. Instead of making 4 interesting builds, we made 0, and like obviously our goal is to make at least 4 interesting builds with the different elements that you can choose from. So it may be the case that some of those things, they're intended to be like a bit more element defining, like the toad gets the protection when you disable someone, to try to really be like that tanky bruiser play style. Maybe these are some things that need to be rolled in baseline for the familiars. It's like, when I specialize in earth, I just have like, it would obviously be a lot weaker if it is not tied to any trait or trade-off, but you could get like a small amount of protection anytime you disable someone when you have the toad equipped, and like then that would give you more room in the trait line to really flesh out some more general things, as opposed to being like as specific as it is right now. So that's just again that's just something that we're kind of thinking about. It's not like a guarantee that these things will change. It's just, we have a bit of time right now where we've mostly been just like bug fixing,
Look at that cute little frog,
and not a whole lot of new development happening for elite specs. So we are already just looking ahead and thinking about possibilities, not saying that anything specific will happen, but these are the things that we think about every day.
Yeah, cool. I
I
think
like
that's some really good insight there as well, actually, because I think it is really important that. Well, I think it's really cool that like loads of new ideas are being brought to the table, but yeah, of course, like those are going to be refined and improved at the time to make sure that they kind of like fit into the
See,
into the
and
game
people
as well.
have good questions in chat. I will say there are people that like I keep seeing pretty decent questions, and they're not taking them, and I just don't. I get that some of them are like specific, but would making Wandering Spiritual's baseline more sense to have the top row be geared towards buffing weapon spells? Support Evoker can give Alacrity, but what about the other essential buffs like stability, might, protection? If we choose Otter, I feel like it's lacking some essential boons. Like, these are pretty good questions. Like, I don't know. Are you able to reveal the mechanism for unlocking the elite specializer? Well, will there be no hero points? Of course there will be. That would be silly if they didn't do that. Speaking of traits for Evoker, could you ask them what they envision for their Home of Earth Evoker would be? I feel like that question comes up a lot, but what did I just see? Right here, for example, this is a great question. Are strips not being added and added an intended thing while bloating boon generation? Is the intent to rework strips boon removal entirely? That's a good question, right? Because I feel like we don't see a lot of boon removal and strips in any of these, and I could be wrong because again, I don't really deal with the like those very specific things, and like when I look at those, I don't really you know, but it seems like I didn't see a lot of that, so it's like I feel like that's a very valid question, so hopefully they'll bring that up. But
I'll actually bring up one specific thing that I noticed, and I think I've had a lot of people asking about this specifically. There are some traits that are just very simply like, do the boon, right? And Paragon is a really good example of this, where it just is like, alacrity. And when you look at that, it seems like really boring relative to the other traits, where it's like, do this, do more healing. When you're designing those traits and thinking about that, how do you balance like making the game balanced and being able